Guys, welcome to the Paracetamol, and today this video gonna be very interesting about the step 1 preparation, about the strategies, about the way, about the planning, plotting and resources and everything. So please watch this video till the end, and please do subscribe my channel. I'm very close to 1000 subscribers. Please, I need your support, guys. And yeah, enjoy the video. Thank you.
Hello guys, welcome to the Paracetamol show, and this is Dr. Purvesh. Or in this session, we are going to talk about the journey of Dr. Saurav, USMLE plus NeetPG. So in this session, gonna be very interesting, and please stay tuned with us. And in this session, we're gonna talk about the introduction and the starting journey of USMLE, then middle phase, then final phase, and then how he tackle NBMEs, self-assessment, what are the mistakes he did, and then we will come to the NEET PG, that how he scored really good in NEET PG 2020 and NEET PG 2021. And in closing, we're gonna talk about how he prepared himself about for the exam. So stay tuned with us, and this video gonna be really interesting. All right, so welcome, Dr. Saurav. Tell me more about yourself. Where are you from? Which medical school you attended?
Hello, Dr. Purvesh. Thank you so much for inviting me, first of all. My name is Saurav Kini, and I finished my MBBS from a medical college called Gujarat Adani Institute of Medical Sciences. It's in Bhuj, Gujarat. And I graduated in 2020. So I'm from the 2014 batch. Okay. And I took my step 1 in 21. Okay. Apart from that, a brief introduction is that, that's about it.
And thank you so much for giving your precious time. I know you are preparing for Step 2 CK these days, and you're really busy with your schedule, but still you gave me time. I'm really thankful to you. And I
it's a pleasure.
Yeah, I met this guy in Heart and Vascular Institute where I did my externship, and he was also there. And I still remember the first day with him. I was like, "Where are you from?" He said, "Gujarat." I said, "From where?" He said, "From Rajkot." I said, "I'm from Surat." And then we started talking in Gujarati. All right, so very nice. Thank you.
Yes.
And so how did you think about USMLE? Like, why you started preparation for USMLE? How did you think? Why did you think about USMLE?
Okay, it's a very complicated answer, but it started off with, first of all, my half of my family lives in the US, so my sister lives in the US, so that was one major reason I was considering it. And then there was this point where I realized that I do not fit into our Indian system in terms of the hospital setup. I do not enjoy all those kind of the things that happen in Indian hospitals that much. I believe in protocol, so certain things did not match for me over here, and I decided that it's much better if I at least try for a US residency and maybe finish my residency there to become a better doctor.
All right. So it's like जब मेहनत करनी है तो थोड़ी सी ज़्यादा कर लेते हैं, like that.
Exactly.
Okay. So how's your starting phase of USMLE journey? When did you start, and with what resources you started?
So I started I knew I wanted to pursue the USMLE journey, I think way back in 2016. Okay. 15, 16. So when I was in my second year, after I finished my first year, that is when I talked to one of my professors, and he suggested that the USMLE is one way of going about it. So I decided to buy first aid when I was in my second year, and I would plan to take my step 1 sometime in third year or final year. Okay. So what I did was I was reading first aid, the step 1 book for first aid step 1 book.
Yeah, first aid. First aid is a Bible or Gita for us, right? For USMLE, first aid is everything for step 1, step 2. Even people use first aid in step 2 CK also. All right.
Okay. So I started when I was in my second year, in way back in 2015-16, and that is when one of my professors suggested that I should pursue USMLE. I started by buying first aid, and it was not my first aid, so it was 2015 edition, so a really old edition, and I was reading it along with my second year subjects. I studied Robbins for patho, but apart from that, I used mostly Indian authors. The only international authors was Robbins, and that is what I read thoroughly in my second year, and I loved it a lot. So I think that helped me in some way. But apart from that, first aid was where I started, and I read it completely during my second year with the aim of taking step 3. I was taking step 1 in my third year, which I didn't do for other reasons, but that's what happened. That's how I started.
So you started with the Robbins, and guys, for step 1, pathology is a main component, and he studied pathology from Robbins. So he created his base very strong. So if your base is strong, your building gonna be much stronger than any other buildings, right? All right. So
Very
so
true.
this is your starting phase. And how about your middle phase? So what happened in between? When did you start your questions and
Mhm.
all those things? Yeah.
Right. So what happened was I was very focused about my university exams. So it's something I'll talk about when we talk about mistakes in my journey. So I was hyper focused to score well in my university exams, and that is something that pulled me back because I was always concerned I would not score well, and if I studied for the steps.
Mm.
So what happened taking step one in third year, I ended up taking step one after my internship. So you can imagine the delay, a delay of let's say 3 years instead
Mm.
of taking it in third year. So I planned to take it in third year, but I didn't start UWorld until I didn't start UWorld. So then half the year went by, and then I felt like my university exams will come up, so I could not take step one this year. I consulted one senior from BJ, and BJ Medical College, and he told me you can actually take the exam in final year. He took it in final year. So I even tried that process, but again, final year, all subjects. So I decided to postpone it to my internship, and it's a typical process, postponing the exam 1 year after another. And my internship finished. I started UWorld during my internship, I think 4 or 5 months into my internship, and yeah, that was in 2019. And that's when I started UWorld for the first time. I was doing it offline. So that is another mistake I'll talk.
So you did.
So
I mean,
mhm.
continue.
I started off with UWorld offline, and I was reading first aid again. This time the 2019 edition. So I actually took my step one in 2021 with the 2019 edition first aid. So because it had a lot of notes in it, so I didn't update it. And that's when I started in 2019 was when my preparation actually started for step one. And I'm this kind of person who likes to be a perfectionist. At the same time, I procrastinate. So it's really long. I would study one section, try and perfect it completely from first aid, and then do UWorld from that section. And I would, if I got something wrong, then I would again, study the same section from first aid. So it was a really rough cycle. And that
So,
was during my internship. And of course, I mean, the internship was pretty hectic, so I couldn't dedicate enough time, and I didn't take enough time off from my duty. So I didn't get weekends off. And that's what kind of spoiled my plan originally to take step one in my internship. And I finished my internship in 2020 in Feb. And that is when I feel like I actually started studying.
right. And always remember, guys, when you start UWorld, that is your first day of USMLE journey. So from first day of UWorld, you can count like next 6 months or next 7 or 8 months you're gonna appear in the exam if you're consistent with the flow. And the thing which Saurabh did, like he went to the system first and then he went to the question, which I also did the same. So for example, if you are doing cardiovascular, do the cardio full, and then move to the questions. And if you are getting stuck between some topics or some hard thing which you are not getting understand, what did you use for that?
Okay, so there were a couple of other resources I used. Your voice is breaking up a bit. Okay, so can you just repeat the question again shortly?
Sure. So, for example, you are studying cardiology, and few topics or some topics are like you didn't understand, or you're forgetting the concept. So, what you did for those things? How did you tackle those things?
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just brief you about the resources I used. Apart from first aid, I studied with boards and beyond. So Dr.
Mhm.
Ryan, and I felt he's really good, especially when you combine Dr. Ryan or boards and beyond BNB first aid. It's a great base, and that's how you can develop. If you don't have a great base from subjects in your preclinical years. So boards and beyond plus first aid was my base, and I think it covered most of my doubts. He actually covers certain concepts that are tested in UWorld, because I think that's how he develops his videos. He looks at what's in UWorld, he looks at what's in first aid, and then he works around that. So he does cover a lot which is in UWorld, so it's helpful. And I think most of the questions or most of the difficult places where I had any difficulties were covered by UWorld. If I at any point I felt like I needed to read something more during my first, my early preparation, I would read Amboss library.
Okay.
So I would use the Amboss library along with boards and beyond and first aid to supplement it, because I did not want to refer to Robbins. I did not want to open my pharmacology textbooks. So what I did was I used the Amboss library, and I think the subscription is $89 a year or $10 a month,
Hmm.
and you can get a
Yes.
free trial as well.
Yeah.
So it's really handy as an extra resource just to read, apart from if you have any weaknesses, any weak topics. And I think it supplements first aid and boards and beyonds very well.
So you did first aid along with boards and beyond, and for some concept or for some knowledge, extra knowledge, you used Emboss library.
Emboss.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
This was during my early preparation.
Early preparation. Okay. So did you use any kind of flashcards or anything?
No, I did not. That is one regret that I had, because I just did not pick up on the concept. I tried using Anki, and I did not. At that time, UWorld flashcards did not exist. I think in 2019, 2020. So I did not actually like Anki much, because I did not want to use a pre-made deck. I didn't like it kind of feels very automated, just sitting and looking at information. So I wanted to, I like active learning more. So I solved questions instead of that. And I feel like maybe if I'd used some flashcards for certain concepts, it would have been good. So what I did instead was, because I needed to review some concepts every, like spaced repetition, right? You want to review some concepts. I had a book, a notebook. It's actually right here. This notebook right here. So I would write down all my wrong questions. So any concepts, like it'll just be a couple of lines. So it's a wrong book or just a wrong notebook. And inside of it are concepts which I did not know. And I would review them, let's say every week at the end of the week, and go through sections that I have. So it's section wise. So starting from whatever system I solved. And so there's biochem and so on. So instead of flashcards, this is what I did.
So guys, flashcards for first aid, I mean, it is available on USMLE RX website, and you can use it. I mean, you can try it for 3 days. There is a 3 days free trial on USMLE RX. So you can use first aid flashcards, or you can use Anki flashcards, whatever you like. And so how's your final phase of preparation? What you did in the final phase? So now you're ready with the knowledge, and now you're ready to start questions. So
Yes.
how did you do questions on daily basis? How many questions you were doing on daily basis? And how did you manage your time along with revision?
Okay. So what happened was, because I told you, like I was focusing on scoring high in these sections, I would solve blocks very slowly, and I would try to get them correct. I spent a lot of time on it. I solved them first in time tutor mode, because I feel like it's the easiest way, especially for your first pass. If you're doing your first pass and you decide to go timed and not tutor, but so then you end up spending more time reading the question again, because you have to recheck the question when you're reviewing the block. So I think tutor mode is the way to go for your first pass. And I solved, I think, roughly 40 questions a day, but I would have bad days and bad weeks sometimes where I wouldn't solve a whole block in the whole week. So I think all of us have those when we are doing our first step preparation, step one preparation.
Yes.
And it's something I think you learn, like once you're in your step 2, you pick it up and you do a block a day easily. But when you're doing your step 1 preparation, yeah, it's a little tough to do a block a day, because you're focused on perfection. So that is another mistake I had. I was so focused. No one told me that you don't have to be perfect on UWorld. You just keep going and pushing forward so that you finish your first pass and you learn from it. So it's a learning tool at the same time.
Yes, exactly. So just I'm also telling everyone, like, you use UWorld as a learning tool. For assessment, you have NBMEs and self-assessment. So those things are for assessment, but UWorld is for learning tool. And add those things, whatever you are getting from the UWorld in your first aid or in your wrong book or whatever you can make. Okay. All right. So okay. So how's your first pass? If you don't mind, would you like to share percentage of your first pass?
Of course, no problem. I scored 88%, but again, like I told you, I was obsessed with perfection and scoring high. So I spent a lot of time on it. So the 88% is exactly not a genuine test marker. It doesn't mean anything at all in this case. Even if I had got 70%, it would not have mattered. And even if I got 95, it would not have mattered. So I got 88 on my first pass, and it was tutor mode and system wise. So there was a genuine bias. So if you're studying from first aid first, and then it's all your knowledge is fresh, then you solve a block of cardiovascular, or you solve a block of neurology, it's bound to be fresh. So there's a bias. If it wasn't random, so the 88 doesn't mean much. So I got 88 on my first pass. And then what happened was, I had enough time to either choose to do another Q bank. So I did use Amboss towards the end a little bit. I had a chance to either do a complete second pass of UWorld or to do my wrongs and my mark. So that is what I did. I did my wrong and mark questions. So this is towards my dedicated period, my last 2 months of preparation. I did my wrongs and my marked questions, which I'm pretty sure were around 800 or 900 questions. I'm not sure exactly. I don't remember. Or maybe a little less. So I created blocks and I would solve them. Like an exam. So I simulated the exam many times before the actual exam day. So I would probably do 7 blocks in a day, and I would attempt to start at 7 or 8 a.m. and finish by around 3 or 4 p.m. So I kind of simulated the exam with my UWorld wrong and marked, and then I would review those questions, the 7 blocks, over the next 3 days or 4 days.
So that way you prepared yourself, like mentally, and
yes,
you increase that way you increase your concentration power or something like sitting capacity or like that.
Mhm.
Okay. So how about NBMEs? How did you tackle with the NBMEs? What NBMEs you attended or something?
Okay, so what happened was I was supposed to take my step one earlier in the year, somewhere towards May. Okay, and I'd applied in June. So the idea was that I would take the exam in May, but because of certain delays, my degree verification of my degree, and certain delays on behalf of NBME, ECFMG and my college, there was a certain delay, and I got my scheduling appointment way in June. So I was delaying that to a certain extent. I didn't know when to start my NBMEs, when to go into super dedicated period. So I think my first genuine NBME was when I got my scheduling appointment, and it was the day I got it, or the day after that. So I was supposed to decide whether I want to when I want to schedule my exam. So that was, I think, one of the first ones, and it was in June. It was on the 20. Okay, it was actually UWSA 1. It was on the 23rd of June, and so my application got processed on the 18th of June. So I took my UWSA 1. I scored 271.
Wow.
At that point. So I decided to go ahead. Yeah, so I decided to schedule my exam in 1 month. Okay.
Okay.
I went ahead and decided to schedule my exam in 1 month. Out of the new NBMEs, NBME 25 to 30, I only took two NBMEs,
Okay.
29 and 30. And I liked both of them. They were pretty decent. I heard a lot of bad reviews about 27, about 28. So I went ahead and took 29 and 30, and I scored 260 in 30 and 264 in 29. So actually, NBME 29 and 30 were very close to my actual score. So they were predictive in a way.
And you did this NBME like online or offline?
I did the new ones 29 and 30 online, and
Okay.
I took NBME 18 as well on the 4th of July.
Okay.
Where I got 263, which is again very close to my actual score. So on the 4th of July, I took that. That was offline because it's not available anymore online.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay.
And another a resource which people use, which is very important, and you get off Reddit. There are many links on Reddit. Is the NBME image bank. So they're all the images from NBME 1 to NBME 30. So the thing is that a lot of images are repeated in your actual step 1 exam, and maybe 3 or 4 questions actually come from that. And I think I saw a couple of images on my exam, 2 or 3 questions. So that's a really good strategy on your last day or the day before a couple of days before your exam. You should just go through them in your last week, so you can go through those images. So that is when we come to last week resources, I'll tell you about them in detail.
Okay. And that is available on Reddit.
Yes. So my number one destination for step 1, my number one location for all resources would be Reddit. Reddit r/step 1, right, is I think the best subreddit for to prepare for step 1. It's better than the Facebook groups where you have a lot of spam and other posts. So there's a lot of moderators, and it's a great forum. So if you need any help, Reddit step 1 is the place to go.
And now, how's your self-assessment too? There's a lot of people,
I took my So what happened was my second UWSA or the UWorld assessment was on it was I think 5 days before my exam. Okay, or 7 days actually before my exam, and I combined it with the free 120 to simulate the exam again. Okay. This time I simulated exactly whatever I would do on the exam day in terms of food, coffee, supplements. So I made a complete simulation, and I made sure that everything matches my exam day. Everything from the point of a shower to working out to whatever. And I scored 269 on that. But the reason it was a little higher than my actual exam was because it was very biochem heavy, and I'm very good at biochemistry. So it was extremely heavy in biochem. I felt each block had around 4 or 5 questions, which were literally like lysosomal storage. I don't want to give any spoilers, but a lot of them were biochemistry questions. And so there was a definite bias in that. I had just studied and revised biochem, and the next day was my exam. So remember, don't do that.
Yeah. Okay. So now we are moving to the exam day. How did you prepare yourself for the exam day? How's your day, the day before exam?
Okay. I'll just briefly tell you about the last week plan and my last week plan and the day before the exam. So my last week I was just revising mostly topics which I was weak at. So I had this long list. I made a list on the side while I was preparing of topics I'm weak at. So it included various tumors, it included disorders of sexual development, development milestones, all those kind of things which you forget. There's a long list on Reddit again. So there's a post on Reddit. If you just search last week checklist, you'll find a lot of similar posts where people make a list of topics you have to cover. So I did that in my last week. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I have a YouTube playlist. I'll send you the link and you can post it in the video. Sure. So a YouTube playlist, and at the same time, I was just focusing on covering my weaknesses, any weaknesses and anything that I have to remember. So you have a lot of stuff, like I have a lot of stuff on my wall, written in sticky notes, so various translocations. Then you have all familial hyperlipidemia syndromes, right? So all of those things are in my last week, which you cannot remember at all, and you get confused with. And I think that, so the day before my exam, I was supposed to, there's this very famous video by Dirty USMLE Dirty Medicine, Dirty USMLE on YouTube. And the video tells you to not study on the last day. You're supposed to wake up at 5 a.m. and run in the morning so that you're tired enough to sleep to beat your anxiety. So I have a lot of problems in terms of anxiety, and I have trouble sleeping sometimes. So I followed that, and I didn't have any caffeine. I woke up at 5 a.m., but I still had trouble sleeping that day. But the reason was because I got a little worked up, and I didn't have anyone to tell me exactly at that point that I have to stop studying. So I mean, I was supposed to stop studying by afternoon. So after lunch, I was not going to study. I had to take a bus to another city, and I had only planned to watch videos and listen to audios and not read anything that day. So it was going to be a very light day, and I ended up studying a little more because I was a little paranoid that I'd forgotten some facts. But the bottom line is, whatever you read on the last day does not come in handy in your exam, except there was this one question I actually popped up, which I spotted because I read something on the last day. That's about it. So it doesn't matter at all. It's not worth losing sleep or stressing out. So instead, one should actually relax with family, watch movies, and pray, work out, sleep, do whatever you have to do on your last day, and get at least 6 hours of sleep. So I managed to get, I think, 4 to 5 hours. And so that was one place, that is one mistake that I need to work on for step 2.
Okay. Any advice for first, second, or third year student or beginners or something? Any advice for
Right.
who are in
So
early years?
if you are in your if you're in your first or second year, first year especially, and you already know you want to pursue your USMLE journey and you want to go for US residency, I would suggest taking your step 1 in third year. There's no question, it's the best route possible. You might wonder, you have a lot of clinical vignettes and everything is case based, right? So if there is an advantage of finishing your final year because you have more exposure to clinical cases, but at the same time, a lot of people score very high simply when they're in the third year because their first and second year is very fresh. So you have the chance of scoring high, and at the same time, you get opportunities to go for electives. So I think that is a clear benefit versus anyone else who's further in the journey. Like if you realize you want to take USMLE when you're in your final year or your internship, you've already missed that outline. You've already missed that deadline. So taking step 1 in your third year is my number 1 advice. And now that it's pass fail, it's even easier to do so. So that is one thing you might want to do. And apart from that, making a solid base using good textbooks, avoiding the trap of only studying IMPs. So read as much as you can, read thoroughly. And I think focusing on your textbooks along with first aid would be a great strategy. So if you have first aid along with you and reading your textbooks and summarizing with first aid, it'll be really great. So you can start probably studying in your second year.
Okay, great. So do you consider Dr. Najib as a good resource for concept?
Absolutely. In your first and second year, I think it's golden. It's a great resource, but you have to have a lot of time because he explains each concept over a period of an hour and 45 minutes or an hour. So chances are, if you actually watch all his videos, you'll either end up not remembering everything you watched, or you'll spend a lot of time trying to memorize it. It's only good for weak. According to me, it's good for areas you're weak in. So if you have a specific system you're not getting, endocrinology or reproductive system, in that case, you can go and watch those videos. But I don't think it's a resource you should use extensively throughout your MBBS, especially not if you're starting your preparation after your internship. It's not a resource to use in the end. It's something you can use in the beginning of your MBBS.
So actually, I was very weak in immuno and hematology, and so I did videos from Najib, and it was pretty good. So what I did, I just put it on 1.5x, and I just saw the video, and then I found some notes from the Telegram or somewhere, and I just revised those notes. I mean, and then I went to the first aid, and
wow,
that was super. So you guys also can use it. And what is the advice for those who are in internship or who already graduated and planning to start preparation for step 1?
Okay, well, my number 1 advice to anyone starting a preparation is to have a plan and a timeline. You have to have a timeline because there's a fixed deadline every single year. It's either the end of September, sometimes towards the end of September, right? So you have a fixed deadline every year. You know what you have to do to get there. So you should have a timeline before you start your preparation. You should be targeting a specific match year. I want to target the 2023 match, for example. And if you have a specific timeline, then you'll know how fast you have to work. Without a deadline, you will never be on time. There's a chance you will always be procrastinating and trying to get better at a certain subject or system, but you'll in the end you lose out because you keep pushing further and further, and you lose out on time. Well, especially now, since step 1 has become pass fail, and step 2 will be probably the main decider in terms of for program directors. So focusing a lot on concepts during your step 1 so that they come in handy for step 2 is very important, and you'll be approaching them together, I feel now. So if you're doing a step 1, you'll be thinking from a point of view that will come in handy for step 2 as well. And I think if once you have a timeline, everything falls in place. So if you have a timeline, that's where you're going correct. If you don't have a timeline, you'll mess up. My bottom line.
Exactly. I agree with this. And the thing so far in this video till now, we discussed about the resources. So those are available like first aid. That's the main thing. UWorld, that's another main thing. Emboss library, you can use it. You can use Reddit for your planning and plotting, right? NBM is self-assessments, Najib, textbook. And how about Emboss question bank? Any review for that? A lot of people are doing
Yes.
questions for Emboss.
The thing is, there's questions based on hammers, right? In Emboss, so you have 1 hammer and 5 hammer questions. I feel the 5 hammer and 4 hammer questions are extremely vague, and sometimes they can be very confusing. They teach you how to solve questions a little wrong. So you shouldn't be focusing only on 4 and 5 hammer questions, thinking that you'll get more yield from it. Because in your exam, the reality is you'll probably have only 1 or 2 of those per your block, or maybe 4 or 5 to the max of, let's say, 4 hammer questions, and maybe 1 5 hammer question in the block. So you should train yourself with easier questions as well. So don't just stick to 4 and 5 hammer questions. I solved, I think, around 300, 400 questions from Emboss, but I didn't buy a subscription. I only used the free trial. So I didn't have a lot of time to solve questions. And I think it's a good question bank to supplement, but it's not a substitute for UWorld. UWorld is your number 1 question bank, and you can have a supplementary Emboss if you're weak in some certain systems. Like I was weak in public health sciences, and patient communication especially. So I targeted along with Emboss and actually did really bad in those blocks, but I learned from them.
Okay, great. And guys, this day in step 1 exam, the main portion which is coming, it's the ethics. So make sure your ethics is really strong, and you have to do. So what resources you use for the ethics? I mean, like a lot of people are using step 2 CK question bank for step 1. I mean, like for the ethics.
Right. I did not have that. I did not have the time to do that. Maybe it's a good idea. I'm not sure. I cannot vouch for it. But what I did was I watched a lot of videos. So you have, I think I'll send you the link. So there are a lot of ethics videos in that. I think 4 or 5 videos. And Dirty USMLE has a real clear-cut outline as to what your answer should be. So it should never have the words you. It should never be about the physician. It has to be about the patient, and so and so. Watching those videos was one resource. So in first aid you have a list of clinical scenarios, or when you're in, so like there'll be a case of either spousal abuse or a case where a child needs a vaccination and the parent declines, right? So you have that page, right? Ethical scenarios or situations. And what I did was I added my first aid is bound, so I added 2 or 3 pages behind that, and I would add whatever UWorld scenario was new to me in that. So I had a lot of these scenarios which I kept reviewing because it was my number 1 weakness. Okay, communication was my number 1 weakness, and I worked on it by writing down all the ethical scenarios in UWorld, adding from Emboss, from NBMEs. So whatever ethical scenario, unique ethical scenario I could find, I kept adding in that. And by the end, I had, I think, like 3 or 4 additional pages in addition to what was what was inside first aid. So I had a lot of scenarios which I kept reviewing, and then you can find a common pattern, and you have to stick to that pattern and review it the day before your exam as well.
Great. I think so far this is much loaded for the USMLE. Now I think we should move to the NeetPG thing. Okay. So I saw that your NeetPG 2020 score was 724 out of 1200, and your rank was 8,235. So how did you manage this rank? And in 2021, it was so good. I mean, like it was 610 out of 800, and your rank was 2,507. I'm like, how did you prepare for NeetPG along with step 1? I mean, this is really impressive.
Yeah, so I did not use any notes or anything from any coaching class. The only resource I used for, which was actually NeetPG, there are 2 resources I used. One was Marrow Pearls. So I would read the pearls when I was walking, or just to kill time in between activities. I would look at pearls. So community medicine, anesthesia, radiology, OBGY, all of those are systems which are not covered in step 1.
Exactly.
So I would look at them. Yeah. So just to add up, apart from step 1, I would add these concepts as well. So there were certain things like some typical questions. I would take a lot of grand tests because I enjoy taking tests. Okay. So I took, I think, at least 5-6 grand tests in total maybe more over the years, over the last 1 year. And so grand tests, pearls, and my number 1 resource for NeetPG, which actually can boost your score by maybe 50 to 100 points, is Zenab Vora's special classes on Unacademy. So they're free classes, and each of them is around 45 minutes, maybe sometimes an hour, and she's absolutely brilliant. So some of the videos I actually watch for step one. Like there are some videos about radio and anatomy correlation. So I like those videos where you have CT anatomy and you have gross anatomy at the same time. So you have a correlation. So she teaches very uniquely, and she's a really good teacher, a very good educator. She's also from the same school as myself. So we went to the same school. So I'm a little biased, and I think she's amazing. So that is my number one NeetPG resource, and uh, that is what I used up till she had some rapid review series. So that is what I studied the month before NeetPG 21. I didn't study anything for NeetPG 2020. I was just preparing for step one. So that's when I think my rank was 8,235. And that was my first NEET. And then in my second NEET is when I finished my step one in August, on the 10th of August. And NEET was on, I think, the 9th or 10th of September. So I had 1 month, out of which I didn't do anything for 20 days. And in the last 15 days, I picked up Xenobora. I watched a lot of videos, and that's about it. I didn't do much at all in terms of no notes, nothing. So just step one and Xenobora is pretty good enough.
And I think it's
first aid also works for NEET.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's free on Unacademy, right? Xenobora.
Sorry?
The Xenobora video, Dr. Xenobora's video.
Yes, her special classes, yes.
All right, and she's also available on YouTube.
Yeah, she has a lot of YouTube series. So I've watched all of those. What I would do is when I wanted to walk or go outside the house, just to refresh. That's a very important thing in your preparation for any exam, is you have to be physically active for at least an hour, 45 minutes a day. So because your physical activity is also linked to your mental health. So you have to be physically active every day. So when I was walking or just doing something else, working out, I would watch her videos on YouTube and on Academy. You can watch them in 1.5x. And she teaches it in general on 1x. She teaches pretty slow, and she's very clear with her speech. So if you're watching on 1.5x, it's pretty fine. And she tells you, in fact, please watch this at 2x. So she's that way. She's really in touch with the preparation, and she's fresh. She studied. I think she uses step one. She uses first aid in her presentations and in her videos. She uses first aid. She uses UWorld. Yeah, she uses UWorld. So she's pretty. It's also USMLE oriented in a way.
Okay. All right. And the last section, and that's the closing. In the closing, first we're going to talk about the supplements. What are the health supplement? I mean, multivitamins, whatever you used. Can you share some details about it? Because anything, this exam is really big exam, and for that we need to prepare our body, our brain. So, what kind of health supplement you used?
So I would suggest just making sure that you have a balanced diet first of all throughout your preparation. So having a good diet and being physically active is your number one priority, and then to supplement that, you can take multivitamins. Of course, vitamin D is very important since we're not going out in the sun much when we are preparing, unless you have a job and you're working at that point. But I think what I used was vitamin D, and I was supplementing it with one multivitamin. I think that's about it. But my main supplement which I used in the last, I think, 1 month was Brahmi. It's also called Bacopa, and it's known to be an anti or anxiolytic. It's an anti-anxiety. At the same time, it's thought to be to increase your cognitive abilities, which I did not feel at all. But I did feel like it reduced my anxiety, so I would take it at night. So I used Himalayas Brahmi, and apart from that, I also used a combination of caffeine and L-theanine. So L-theanine is an amino acid which people take with caffeine to reduce anxiety. So again, I told you I have a lot of anxiety. So when I would drink caffeine or coffee, I don't drink coffee, but when I drink tea, a lot of tea, sometimes I get some jitteriness in my hands. And when I take L-theanine, it helps. So on my exam day, that is another thing I took. I took L-theanine along with caffeine.
Okay. So that was your closing. Or anything you want to say in closing?
Some mistakes. We can just talk about the mistakes part very briefly. I'll just like top 3 mistakes you can possibly make in your step 1 preparation is starting offline UWorld and not starting online UWorld. I think number 1, a big mistake people do. Okay. Number 2 is using too many resources. So you end up using Osmosis, you use Amboss, you use UWorld, Kaplan. Right. For the record, I did not read Kaplan at all. And so if you use too many resources, like myself, you end up spending too much time where you don't need to dedicate so much time. You have select, let's say 3 or 4 resources and stick to them. By 3 or 4, I'm including like 1 video resource, 1 question bank, 1 reference like Amboss library, and that's it. Do not extend yourself and watch multiple videos from the same topic. Stick to 1 and trust it. All of them are good. So limiting your resources, starting UWorld online, and having a timeline before you start. you must have a timeline before you start any exam, your preparation for any exam. You have to know when is your desired period to take the exam. You cannot work in the other way, like you study and then you wait for your scores to increase, because that will never happen. You will end up delaying your exams further and further. Oh, I'm not ready for this assessment, I'm not ready for this NBME, right? So as you delay it longer. But the thing is, once you have if you have a low NBME score, you can adjust your timeline accordingly at any point. If you need to extend your timeline, you can, but you should have a specific timeline saying that I'm taking NBME on this date, and that is final. So irrespective of what happens, you take the NBME on that date, and then if your score is high or as where it is where you desire it to be, then you proceed with your timeline. So having a timeline, not just for your step 1 or step 2, but also for your match year, that is something I did not have, and I just kept delaying because of that. So I think having a timeline is very important. So those are my top 3 mistakes that one should not make during the step 1 preparation.
All right. So thank you, Saurav, for this session. I mean, like, this was really nice. And I also learned a lot from this session. And definitely, I'm going to imply all those things in my step 2 CK preparation, which I'm doing. I'm doing my second pass right now. I'm also late. I also delayed my exam so many times due to a lot of hurdles, ups and downs. So thank you so much. And I still remember this guy. He used to eat breakfast in HVI, Heart and Vascular, in the morning, and he used to share his vitamin D pill with everyone. Like, do you want this vitamin D? Do you want this vitamin D? So this is this is really kind thing. All right. Thank you, Saurav, for giving me time. And
thank you for having me, Purvesh.
Thank you so much. And guys, if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me on my Instagram, the Paracetamol, or you can ask Dr. Saurav. I don't know whether he's gonna share his.
Yeah, sure. You can. My Instagram handle is Saurav Skywalker, and Purvesh will add a link in the description, or you can contact me on LinkedIn or my email, and Purvesh will add some contact details for sure.
Right. Thank you so much, Saurav. Thank you so much for joining. Have a good day.
Thank you, Purvesh.